Dustin Baker is the editor of VikingsTerritory.com. He is a maestro on all things Vikings. Thanks for being with me once again. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a good week to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, week one, you guys looked incredible. Granted, I don't know how much the Packers had to do with that, but when you assess your performance offensively with your new head coach, finding the long ball, hitting so many of your special targets, and then also defensively, what stands out to you the most?
Well, it was an absolute change of pace. So there was a theory when they hired a new general manager and head coach that, are they going to rebuild? And they didn't. They basically stuck with the same core of superstars. And we wanted to see it come to fruition if indeed a philosophical twist would do the trick. And right out of the gate on the first drive, they faced a 4th and goal from the 5-yard line. And in past years under the former regime, they may have kicked the field goal or tried some strange play that didn't work. But with no hesitation, they decided to go for it and scored a touchdown. So on offense, it was complete creativity to what we had seen in the past 8 years.
Offensively, did the team exceed your expectations knowing that there was going to be changes?
Oh, yes, because they were aggressive. So the score ended up very much a Mike Zimmer score, 23-7, play a little offense, get off the field, and suffocate them with defense. And that used to work in his defense, but it didn't the last 2 years. But this time, when you heard the Packers' footsteps coming, they stayed aggressive and they passed the football. Whereas from 2014 to 2021, we would have ran it up the middle and hoped for the best on defense.
What do you think is possible for you guys having this more pass-oriented attack? How big of a game changer is that?
Well, it's everything because inside of the defense-first scheme that they had under Zimmer, they somehow accumulated all these marvelous offensive weapons with Jefferson, Thielen, Cook, Cousins, Irv Smith. And so they can be maximized now. And that's the vision with an offense-first head coach is how far can they get this thing going? I picked them to go 11-6 before last week, and I actually feel really good about that right now.
I was going to say, that's a pretty ballsy, dare I say, prediction heading into the season to go 11-6. But, what was it that you sensed either about the new head coach or what they have offensively, weapons-wise, that led you to believe that, hey, this team might be better than people think?
Well, I had to assume that I've been doing this football thing since I was 5 years old, and I'm not such a homer that I'm insane. And so I looked at the roster over and over, and I see Danielle Hunter, Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, Kirk Cousins, all the offensive guys that I mentioned, and I'm like, there has to be a winning record in there somewhere. So I trusted the brains of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the new general manager, when he evaluated it and said, I'm not tearing down anything. We're going to go with these guys again. So that sheer amount of talent, I just had this vision that there's got to be a way that these guys can win because otherwise I know nothing. And I would hate to admit that. And, it's only 1 week. So I could be on this show next week and they just got creamed 49-0, but we shall see.
What do you think the biggest misconception is about Kirk Cousins?
Oh, there's a bunch. I don't know. You want a separate show? There's a couple. The big ones are that he's a check down passer. I've never understood that one because when people use that argument, they're insinuating that he doesn't throw deep, that all he does is check down. And he's one of the deep passers in the league since 2015. He leads the NFL in touchdowns of 40 yards or more. So the check down Charlie one has always confused me. And then the same gig with padding his stats. It's like he's good in garbage time, but he's also pretty darn good when it's not garbage time. And the numbers bear that out. So I think he's the victim of the quarterback record stat. Right now it's 60, 59-2, almost even Steven. And he's just skewered for it. But with Matthew Stafford, before he won his Super Bowl, he had an upside down record and everybody felt bad for the guy. And Cousins doesn't get that same sympathy. So yeah, we could go on for a half hour if you wanted about Cousins falsehoods, but I think he's getting a fair shake now with a coach that, wraps both arms around him, and they were coworkers in Washington.
When you look at the Vikings skill group, you highlighted some of their stars, obviously, but where would you rank this kind of core group of skill players among really the best in the league?
Well, the Bengals is good. You can never count the Chiefs out because they have Mahomes throwing, the Chargers and Raiders. So I guess a week ago I would have said top 8, but now that I saw it in motion and they're actually going to do the stuff that we thought they were capable of, I would say in the 5 or 6 in terms of their weaponry, especially if you're just accounting for Jefferson, Thielen, and Cook. I mean, Cousins is all over. The opinion of Cousins is all over the board. So if you say he's part of the top 5 weaponry, people will tell you that you're, bogus. But if you're just doing playmakers at skill positions like wide receivers and running backs and tight ends, then certainly top 5.
You need to have a quick memory in this league, obviously, or be able to kind of compartmentalize. Now the Vikings head to a primetime contest against the Eagles on Monday night. What do you forecast for whether or not they can keep this momentum going?
I need to see it again. So I thought they would beat the Packers, but I didn't think it would be relatively dominant like it was. And so I'm scarred because in Monday night road games, the Vikings haven't won a game against a team not named the Bears since 2008 on Monday Night Football. They've won 3 times on the road, but they were all against the Bears. The last time they did it, Gus Frerotte was the quarterback in 2008, and that was against the Saints. So if they're not playing the Bears on Monday Night Football on the road, they have lost every year since 2009. So I still have that in my DNA. Like, I'm going to sit down on my couch with my family. I'm going to be nervous because I guess I will convince myself that week 1 might have been an outlier. So I think ultimately this will surprise some people. I will pick the Eagles to win, but I don't think they'll get clobbered. I don't know. I guess I'm an optimistic dude, but I've also lived this Viking stuff since 1996, and I'm telling you, primetime games on the road are not their forte.
I am shocked to hear you say this against the Philadelphia Eagles with the way you guys played in week 1. This is truly just one haunting stat that is forcing you to put what we saw in week 1 to the side?
Yeah, because there was some stuff in the Packers game, even though you left the 23-7 score. They gave up a lot of chunk yardage against the run. They gave up 6.2 yards per carry, which after 1 week is like 5th worst in the league. And that's what the Eagles do, is run the football. So I will bang the drum really loud next Tuesday if they find a way to exercise demons. But I kid you not, Monday Night Football games on the road from whatever era of Vikings football bring anxiety. And unless you're in US Bank Stadium or the Metrodome, they usually don't get the job done. So I'm skeptical.
Defensively, what did you find particularly efficient about the job that they did?
Well, they didn't collapse in the crucial moments, and I still will never be able to explain it. In the final 2 years of Mike Zimmer's tenure, in the final 2 minutes of halves, they just rolled over and have historically bad points allowed, especially last year. Well, in this one game, they didn't do that, and then they had Zadarius Smith, who billed the game as his personal vengeance game. We loved that. He made good on the offer. And then, Jordan Hicks is a new linebacker. He had about 10 tackles. So they were making plays. In the second quarter, there was a goal line stand that they came up with that completely changed the game. It flipped the field. The Vikings went down and got a field goal. So they came up big in huge moments. And in 2021, it was the opposite. They played well in the first 10 minutes of a half, and then it got down to crunch time in a half, and it was just complete rubbish.
Is that because they've got some returning personnel from the group that made those kinds of key mistakes? Is that different philosophy from the defensive coordinator? Is that a head coach that they can believe in a little bit more? Is that players just being more disciplined? Because I look at the NFL preseason, and overall, aside from, you guys and the job that a handful of other teams did, I felt like, man, all the teams across the league could use an extended preseason because it's all sloppy. These guys are all out of shape. There's no chemistry anywhere. And that's kind of the price you pay for taking away another week of preparation when the offseason feels really short anyway. But when you come out in a different season and all of a sudden you see a defensive core group improving upon what had essentially been their Achilles heel the last couple of seasons, what do you ultimately attribute that to?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So they switched to a 3-4 for like the first time in Vikings history. The Vikings did it once in like 1986, but this has been a long-standing 4-3 franchise, just like the Steelers. And so when they hired the new coach, he brought in Ed Donatel, who's a 3-4 guy. And some of a lot of the players are better suited for that type of scheme. And then secondarily, Danielle Hunter missed all of 2020 and then missed half or so of 2021. And he is the straw that stirs the drink for the Vikings defense. That's the only thing when I try to do my autopsy on how did this defensive mastermind in Zimmer go bad, I think it's because Danielle Hunter did so much. So the switch to the 3-4, everybody was healthy on defense. That was a big deal because in the preseason, they didn't play the starters. So the Vikings rolled the dice on the preseason rust thing, and it works. And I think that's because O'Connell and the Rams did it last year, and bada bing, they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, how many teams do you feel like outside of Minnesota, maybe this is more of a general NFL question, are
Mm-hmm.
starting to follow the blueprint of some of the things that the Rams have done outside of the fact that they pushed all their chips to the middle of the table in the draft and picked up all these guys, and that ultimately yielded huge success for them. But just in terms of risks that they take,
Mm-hmm.
is that sort of becoming a model or a blueprint for some other teams like the Vikings in terms of how to essentially make a run and win this thing?
Oh yeah, you copy everything. That's kind of how it goes. So I don't know. I don't know if every team's going to trade every first round draft pick they have for 6 years, because that's what the Rams did. And, Jared Goff was their last pick, but focusing on a Herculean wide receiver like Cooper Kupp, we already saw that in the first game. Justin Jefferson getting them involved, and then a little thing that I think flies under the radar is in the last 2 seasons, a decent football team who got a new quarterback won the Super Bowl. Brady to Tampa, Stafford to the Lions. And I mean, I guess this year's addition would probably be Russell Wilson and the Broncos if they could turn things around. But yeah, in that copycat sense, I think you'll see a lot of that. But I'm firmly on board with the preseason one. I know you talked about the rust, but to me, it's like, God, if we're going to put Dalvin Cook out there for a series and then boom, he blows up his knee, was this really worth it?
Yeah.
And I think as a longstanding fan and writer about this league, I think I've accepted that if we get some rust in the first week, so be it.
Well, ultimately, it comes down to cash at the end of the day. And so with it being so profitable to add an extra week to the regular season, the fact is that they're just not going to go backwards. But you're okay with everybody sort of stomaching the fact that, you know what, week one in the NFL season as it gets going is probably going to be a little bit messier than maybe we hoped for. But, at the end of the day, you said there's a lot of risk reward too there's a lot of a risk with putting your starters out there in the preseason. We've seen those freak injuries happen all over the place, and it really puts teams in a bad spot. So basically, long story long, you say let's just keep things as is, go with week one. And the reality is we're not going backwards anyway.
Yeah, for the starters. Now, I firmly believe they should keep the preseason for all the roster battles, because how else will, dudes get a job? But the Vikings played miserably in all 3 preseason games. And I sat down like a doofus watching all of them, thinking it was going to be different a little bit. And no, the offense was vanilla. They were still playing Kellen Mond and Sean Mannion for some reason. But now, seeing that it worked against the Packers, I'm a firm believer that it's really like Zach Wilson. He got hurt. There was a half hour in the week 1 of the preseason where Zach Wilson got hurt. I think it was Drake London got hurt, and you weren't sure if that was going to be for the season. So I think in that adaptation, certainly keep the preseason, because those bubble guys got to make a name for themselves. But yeah, if you look at the quarterback performance, it really was pretty rusty last week. I mean, there were the guys like Mahomes and Josh Allen who will be good no matter what, but like the bottom half of the 32 were all really poor, and I think they just need time to get going.
So they beat the Packers, who many expected they might, because the Packers have a whole laundry list of problems. If they go and beat the Eagles on Monday, are you comfortable with where you picked the preseason in terms of their record, or will you give them an extra game or two? What will that show you if they're able to buck the trend that scares you so much?
Well, here's what'll happen especially if it's somewhat convincingly, like they did against Green Bay. If they beat Philadelphia, then you do that thing where you look at the schedule and you're like, every game looks good, and you're like, I don't see any losses here, baby. The same thing happened in 2016. The Vikings with Sam Bradford, his first couple games of the Vikings, they started off 5-0 because the defense was scoring touchdowns, special teams were scoring touchdowns. And I remember looking at the schedule thinking, good God, we're going to beat everybody. And then after the bye week, no good. They quickly were 5-5, and I was looking at that same schedule going, I don't think we can win any of these games. So yeah, it's all about the vibe, how they look against the Eagles. If they do beat the Eagles convincingly, I will start to believe that my 11-6 was too conservative, because their schedule isn't too gruesome. They have 9 home games, 7 road games, and then the one in England against the Saints. And I think heading into the dance here, they had the 13th easiest schedule based on opponents' wins and losses last year. So yeah, if they beat the Eagles, it will show me something, and then that's when I'll start to do the dance of, maybe they're 12-5, maybe they're 13-4.
I am going to be watching intently. I hope that we can get you back after Monday Night Football, because whatever happens, I kind of want to hear now what you have to say about it.
Yeah, well, it'll be dual-fold there, because if they lose, I'm going to be like, that road Monday night games, I told you. But if they take care of business, then my world really changes, because everybody, even just the the guys and gals who casually watch it, they're going to start to look at it and be like, wow, these guys are good. Beat the Packers and the Eagles out of the gate?
I don't know where I'm putting my money yet. But if Dustin Baker says it, then I'm going to listen. So I might bet the Eagles on Monday night, but TBD. Thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely.
Great insight. As always, hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, you holler at me when you want a Vikings guest. I appreciate it.
You bet.